Coming to you mere miles from the ACC headquarters in Greensboro, North Carolina, this is Lance D in the Man Cave studio with your weekly ACC update. Well, we finally made it to the final week of ACC's regular season through COVID concerns, teams going on pauses, games getting postponed or just straight up canceled. Here we are. 1 week from today, we'll have the ACC tournament brackets all set. An interesting update is, contrary to what was said a couple of weeks ago, new changes at the state level are going to allow for fans to be in attendance at the conference tournament in the Greensboro Coliseum. Still a pretty low percentage of the building's overall capacity. My guess is tickets will be difficult to come by, but at least we'll have some fans there, and maybe one of you gets the opportunity to be in the building. We can look back over this past week at different games that got played, and the truth is most of them just were not that close. It was very few games that felt like they came down to the final possession. But we really saw some inspired play, some surprise wins, and guys that just went out and showed that maybe they're better than what their numbers have led people to believe so far. With that in mind, let's kind of look back, think about our top individual performances of the week, and name a game of the week. Now, looking at individual players, this was a little tough, but I think having also seen a number of the games made this a little easier for me. Maybe just looking at the numbers makes it a little harder. But I've got to give the individual performance of the week to Moses Wright with Georgia Tech. This past Saturday, they're playing at home against Syracuse, and Wright's been a really good player all year, likely first team all-conference guy. He played like he was fighting for Conference Player of the Year on Saturday. Guy ended up finishing with 31 points, 16 rebounds. I think he had a couple of steals, couple of assists, maybe a block or two. Just felt like on both sides of the court he was constantly impacting the game. He's a bigger, long, physical presence that disrupted things for Syracuse whenever they tried to move inside the perimeter, sometimes even out on the perimeter. I think he had some tip passes. But just a all-star performance for Moses Wright. The truth is, his other game of the week was a really strong performance when Georgia Tech went on the road and beat Virginia Tech. Wright put up 26 points and 10 rebounds there. So just having really strong week. Again, kind of making a push here at the end for his case at Conference Player of the Year. And we'll see through the next week or so where things wrap up. But Wright's just getting to another level right now. I will give an honorable mention to Duke's Matthew Hurt. Duke took a loss in overtime, playing at home in Durham against the Louisville Cardinals this past Saturday. But on the offensive end, Duke could only count on Matthew Hurt. I think one other guy got into double figures late in the last couple minutes, maybe even in overtime. But through most of the game, it was Matthew Hurt who was the only one they could really count on to put the ball through the hoop. Guy finished with 37 points, 7 rebounds. Again, just offensively a monster night. Part of the reason, great offensive numbers, didn't have the best defensive night, and he actually fouled out in the game. But there were a lot of times I think he physically just didn't quite match up with who he was having to guard or who he would switch on to. And that led me to giving an edge to Wright. But Hurt still had a great game. And again, offensively, it feels like he's almost unguardable because he can just shoot at every level. He has nice little moves around the basket. We're not talking about a small guy. He's legitimately 6'9". And if he's on his half of the court, you better get a hand in his face because he'll launch it. Now, thinking about our individual game of the week, I ended up giving this to a game that I felt was a team that showed kind of a huge surprise in terms of the final result and just a lot of, guts and resilience through their play. And that's NC State when they traveled up to Charlottesville and took down the Virginia Cavaliers on the road. Now, NC State, lost their arguably their best player a couple of weeks ago, Devin Daniels, who went down with an injury, and he's out for the year. So, State's been having to adjust to playing without him. And this win over Virginia, I think, is their signature win on the season. I think they're now they won another game yesterday against Pittsburgh. They're on a 4-game win streak now. And when your best offensive player goes down, that's not something you anticipate happening. Again, particularly when you're playing games like on the road at Virginia, some of these young guys for NC State are really stepping up, playing good basketball, getting things done on the defensive end. That's maybe where I think the biggest change from a few weeks ago is for this NC State team. Manny Bates, he's going to get his blocks. He's a big athletic guy. But all around, State's making offenses uncomfortable when they're playing them. That's going to keep them in a number of games. But this game is a midweek game this past week. I think NC State was lucky that they definitely caught Virginia on a cold shooting night, and Virginia's shooting woes kind of led to NC State being up, I think it was 29-23 at halftime. But again, NC State's playing some good defense, and a lot of things they did defensively kept Virginia, just at arm's distance through the second half as NC State, continued to hold the lead throughout the second half. Now, I think it was with, let's say, roughly 2 minutes left or so. No, I think it was under 2, so maybe a minute and a half or so. Jay Huff, the big center for Virginia, hit a couple of free throws, cut State's lead to 4. You're thinking that Virginia has a lot of these late game runs where their defense gets the stops, their offense finds a way to put it through the hoop, and they've won a lot of games the past 5, maybe going back 6, 7 years that, if you could look at the last minute or two, you would think their percentage chance is pretty low, and felt like there was a good chance that could happen. They're playing at home. But, NC State, they hit their free throws down the line. A team that's been up and down with their free throw shooting, I think only missed 1 of their final 6 or 8 in that last minute or two. Now, the Cavaliers hit a couple of three-pointers in the last minute. I think Sam Hauser got one with about 21 seconds to cut it to 4. But again, NC State hits the free throws. Virginia isn't able to score again. And State gets the win, 68-61. Again, I can't emphasize, on the road at Virginia. That is a win that for any program has been very hard to come by the past few years, as Virginia has just been playing a high brand of basketball as a program the past, approaching a decade now. So yeah, shout out to NC State, real big win for them. I know I've mentioned this before, but the ACC standings are a little funky. Some teams have played 4 or 5 games more than some of the others, and the conference has said, we're just going to go by win percentage and conference play to create an order for seeding with the ACC tournament and to crown a regular season champion. So right now we've got Florida State at 10-3 at number 1 overall, and then the Virginia Cavaliers at number 2 at 11-4. But I will say there are a number of teams with 4 and 5 losses, knocking on the door at Virginia. They just haven't played as many games as Virginia, so they don't have the same number of wins. Right behind them is Virginia Tech at 9-4, and Tech has the win over Virginia this season too. Louisville Cardinals are at 8-4 now. Clemson is at 9-5. UNC is at 9-5. Georgia Tech's just maybe a step off at 9-6 right there. So a lot of competition up there. I suppose it's worth mentioning, the Duke Blue Devils are at 9-7 now, won 4 of their last 5. Had a heartbreaker against Louisville in overtime in Durham on Saturday. But they're still, from where they were just a few weeks ago, definitely trending in the right direction, playing much improved basketball. So we continue to go down the list. Syracuse is at 7-7, sitting at 500. NC State is also at 500, 8-8. Other than their heads-up match, I'm not sure how the conference would split a tie like that where the percentage is the same, particularly if they split their regular season games or maybe some of the teams haven't played each other. That's, again, one of the weird things about this year. After that, I think you comfortably fall down to the lower tier of the conference now. Notre Dame's at 6-10. Pittsburgh just really fallen apart the last month. Has fallen to 5-9. And then the real low tier, Wake Forest at 3-13, Boston College at 2-9, and the poor Miami Hurricanes at 3-14, still with multiple starters out. Doesn't look like the guy you thought would be the star for Miami, Chris Likes, doesn't like he's going to play at all this season. So shame for Miami, but they've had a few games where they've hung tough, showed some grit. So don't be shocked if they come through and win on the first day and try to make some noise in Greensboro next week. Week after this one. But before we look too far ahead, let's stay focused on, we've got this last week of ACC basketball left. And, the highlight of the week, I think, is going to be the very last game. This Saturday night, 6 p.m. on ESPN. We've got Chapter 2 of the Tobacco Road rivalry. Duke's heading down to play UNC. The Smith Center is allowing fans, I think roughly 3,000 fans now for that game. They had about the same number for Florida State this past Saturday. And it felt like watching the game that having fans there and the bit of energy they could provide impacted that game and led UNC to get a big come-from-behind victory. So, Duke is definitely just on the wrong side of the bubble, but fighting for a spot into the NCAA tournament. I'm still in the camp of I think they will likely need to make a run in the ACC tournament, probably get at least to the championship game, but who knows? The NCAA has said now that they're going to have some teams in standby the first couple of days after the bracket is released. So, it's, again, just interesting time for all of us in our lives, but particularly with reference to sports, a lot of unprecedented things happening this past year. But again, Carolina Duke rarely disappoints. I don't expect that game to be unprecedented. I just expect really fun basketball and a good game on Saturday. So make sure to keep your eyes and TVs peeled for ESPN 6 p.m. Saturday. After that game, we'll have our official seedings for the ACC tournament. We'll know who's number 1. We'll know who's number 15 and playing on Tuesday. Beyond that, that's my recap of the week that was. So if you have any questions, comments, strong disagreements, don't hesitate to drop a comment below. Give me a like or subscribe if you want to keep getting updates. And otherwise, have a great week. Go ACC.